All right, we are live. This is, I put this together last night and I wanted to try something new on the channel. So hopefully we get some people to join, add to live chat, ask questions, provide comments. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go and start on some of the topics that are on the top of my mind right now because of all of the different news that has been going on. Obviously, with 2024, we have had some major updates to regulation, and that includes Title II. And of course, we recently had the HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services. They updated their Section 504 regulation. So now that includes digital accessibility as well. So there is a lot to cover, but let's go ahead and start off with the ADA Title II Resource Center I have here. So a number of entities are working towards compliance with ADA Title II, and I think what's going to happen is the same thing that happened in Colorado. So Colorado provided 3 years advance notice to come into compliance, and what they needed to do ended up having to do was extend their deadline because nobody was in compliance. Everybody just waited until the last minute, and then they realized, oh, this law actually requires a lot, and we are not even close to being finished with this. And so what happened was they actually updated the law, HB 241454, I believe it is, extends the compliance deadline a year. But even with that extension, what you're going to see is that there are different public entities within Colorado that are not going to be ready for HB 21-1110. They're not going to have everything WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. And that law is really comprehensive. It includes all technology. And so Colorado really went, they went as far as they could. So I think that with Colorado doing that, we had so many Colorado entities not meeting that deadline, and I think the same thing is going to happen in Title II because people just don't realize how much is involved with accessibility until they get started, and when they get started, all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming, and then it's like, well, nobody gave us enough time, nobody gave us enough advance notice. And I think that's one other thing that the legislatures could do, with the Department of Justice could do. They could put out more material on just how long this takes, because people hear about a law, they hear that compliance is in the future. You know, if you hear a 2-year deadline, a 3-year deadline, that sounds like a lot of time. But in the context of digital accessibility, it's really not. When you start working on compliance, you quickly realize, oh, WCAG 2.1 AA. When you say it as just like the simple standard, it doesn't sound like a lot. Oh, okay, I just need to be WCAG conformant. But when you start working through it, you realize, oh, there are 50 success criteria. So there are 50 things to do that I need to work through. And it's not easy to work through them, especially when these different organizations are likely completely unfamiliar with digital accessibility. And so even people that have a vague idea, they'll think, oh, well, it's just alt text, maybe closed captioning. And that's, in my experience, a lot of people excuse away accessibility as just that. And when you look into it, it's much, much more. And so what's going to end up happening is all of these different public entities are going to become overwhelmed. They're not going to take it seriously at first. And then at the deadline, they're going to rush to get this done. There aren't going to be reputable service providers available. And then you will see the desperation seek in, and people will be asking for help. It's already happened in Colorado, and I think it's going to happen again because people just aren't aware of this. For some reason, people don't quite pay attention to accessibility. It happens over and over again, and really even the lawsuits haven't. They've got people more aware of accessibility, but they still aren't paying attention to what exactly needs to happen. And so the people's reactions to lawsuits, sometimes people are proactive, but a lot of times people end up complaining about why they find themselves in the lawsuit or dealing with the lawsuit to begin with, which is understandable, but still you've got to resolve this issue and you have to be proactive with it. And the reality is that most people overlook this. They gloss right through this. They don't pay attention to this. I don't know why, but for some reason, people just don't pay attention to accessibility. And that's why we see so many people buying things that are unnecessary or unhelpful. We've seen the success of overlay widgets, I think in large part because people don't research and they don't want to deal with this at all. So they end up pushing it to the side, and then they end up buying an overlay widget. So back to Title II. I'm currently on my Title II Resource Center, and I created this because I anticipate the difficulty in all of these different Title II entities working towards compliance. And when we say Title II, you think of state and local governments, but when you look further, there are so many different what are called I think the DOJ uses the term instrumentalities. I think that's the word. Instrumentalities connected to state and local government. So just think about parks, any governmental programs and services, social services, voting offices, emergency. So you have law enforcement, so emergency services, EMS, firefighters, and then of course schools and education is a major part of this. But there are so many different public entities, and they all have to work through digital accessibility. And I can guarantee you that 95% plus of them don't have the requisite knowledge to take on this project. It is a major project, and they're not going to get through it in time. So to help those that are being as proactive as possible, I created this ADA Title II Resource Center. And what this does is this lays out really where to get started and where you want to end up, your budgeting, your objectives, all of the different information that you need to have a foundation for where to begin. Because I'm just anticipating that let's just take your local police department. They might have a contractor who works on their website, and then some people that post on social media. Maybe it's just people within the department, but they don't have anybody who's familiar with digital accessibility. And that's another part of this is really a specialized subset of knowledge. It is not something that you just have because you're a developer or because you work in social media or you're on the marketing team. And I think that's another problem is people think that somebody knows this and really nobody does. And so because of that, I created this ADA Title II Resource Center because I think this is going to help people at least have somewhere to start. And I'm going to, and I'm currently on the Resource Center on accessible.org. I will link to this in the description. But before I go into the different links in the Resource Center, I'm going to tab over to the DOJ's fact sheet. So you have the DOJ's fact sheet, which really brings forward the law. So it makes the law simpler and easier to understand, which is nice. So it's a good fact sheet. But people are these different public entities are ill-equipped, and this fact sheet is going to give them the basics of what they need to know. So what is required for compliance, what are the different exceptions, but it's not going to, there's a lot of missing details in here that the DOJ doesn't have to address in the fact sheet, but I would recommend that the DOJ included more documentation to help these different public entities. Because after all, if you want someone to be compliant, then you want to make it as easy as possible for them to be compliant. So explain what you want. The DOJ has done this, but then also explain how to do this. And this is where I think the DOJ has left everyone, they're not completely, they haven't left everyone completely on an island, but I think that there's a lot more. And then that's what I've tried to shore up is all of the information that could fill in the gaps and help actually take this law and take practical action on it. So one thing the DOJ has come out with, and I've tabbed to it now, and I'm on ada.gov. And by the way, everything in this stream I'm going to post in the description. But one thing the DOJ did come out with is a small entity compliance guide. And I have a video on this. And in the video, I criticize the DOJ because this is not just for small entities. This is for anybody. Everybody needs help with ADA compliance and digital accessibility. It's by no means just small entities. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies who cannot even get, they can be working with an accessibility company. They still can't get this right. So this is just something that has been a stumbling block for many organizations. So it's definitely not just for small entity compliance guide. But then another one of my critiques is a lot of this guide is just bringing forward what was in the fact sheet. So there's a lot of copying and pasting here. So that's surprising that they created this separate guide and then copied and pasted it. But just scrolling down, if you go all the way down, there is some different information, and it's in planning for success. So here we have the DOJ starting to help in what I was talking about. It's they're starting to provide some information and filling in the gaps. And so they talk about creating an accessibility policy, which you really need to do. And if you started to work on any type of significant project, you would actually write out an accessibility policy in some form, because you need a centralized document that organizes your efforts. Because otherwise you're just working and you're not sure who's working on what, who's responsible for what. So the DOJ says that creating a policy is a good idea, yes. But on this page, there's not a lot of information that describes like what a policy is. There are 4 bullet points. So a nice start, but again, a lot of these Title II entities, they're going to be mostly on their own when it comes to just DOJ guidance. So then the DOJ writes creating processes for people to make accessibility requests and report accessibility issues. And what they're getting at here is having an accessibility statement. But what I don't know why is understand what they're doing is they're hinting around this. So why are you hinting around this? Why not just tell people exactly what you want, which here they're stating they want an accessibility statement in so many words. They don't outright say it. They don't use the word statement, but they do indicate that they would like to see all of the information that really relates to an accessibility statement. And then they have training your staff. So again, they're telling you, they're giving you some light information, some helpful information. This is what you need to do, but there's not a lot in execution. And then so they refer to the W3C, the W3C's document, which the W3C does have good information, but one of the common criticisms throughout the years of the W3C, particularly the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, is it's very cryptic. It's technically written, and these are very literally technical standards. And when you read the documentation, you quickly find that out, because these different success criteria are difficult to parse through. And referring to the W3C, I understand that the DOJ really doesn't want to endorse anybody else, but I think the DOJ should. I think their guides, their small entity compliance guide and their fact sheet, they are written well. They're written in plain English. They're easy to understand, so they're very nice guides. But I think more would be helpful. And so getting back to myself and accessible.org, this is why I have the ADA Title II Resource Center, is to help these different public entities. And by the way, if you're not a public entity, this is still going to help for any larger or medium-sized organization that's working on an accessibility project, because there's just more involved than just a simple website, right? Like if you're a small business, a small website, there's not a need to have all of these different dynamics in play, right? We don't need to have a platform. We don't need to have a policy, because it's likely just 1 or 2 people working on the accessibility, and we're continuing on. And that's really all we're getting to. So yeah, you could have a policy, but that's not, that's a simpler task. But if you're a medium-sized organization or a larger organization, if you have multiple digital assets, if you have different roles involved, that's when you need to start planning, budgeting. And budgeting is another big part of this because you have to allot for the expense, and it is expensive to audit a website, to remediate a website, to train a large team. That there is an expense involved with that. So I think that's another interesting dynamic in the public entity sector, is how they're going to budget for this and what they will budget for it. But they are going to need several thousands of dollars because there's just a cost associated with, let's say, making a mobile app WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. So getting into the actual resource center, which I'm on this page now, I start with the table of contents, and then I just really, all this is divided into different sections with different links to resources. So we have legal requirements, and so one of the guides is actually my version of the fact sheet. So what I've done is, and I'm on this now, I went to a new page, and I will link to this page in the description. But going to this new page, I have my summary and really a more comprehensive explanation of the fact sheet, so you know exactly what is required under this new updated regulation, what it means. So I talk about private contractors, because the fact sheet, I can't remember if they got into that in detail, but I explain how private contractors can potentially be implicated under this new rule. I give different examples of who must comply. I explain what archived web content is, pre-existing traditional documents, etc. But this is really taking the fact sheet and superimposing it and looking at it at a more granular, detailed level, so that you can get a very visceral feel for what is required, what you need to do, what the exceptions are, etc. But now tabbing back to the ADA Title II Resource Center, we go from the legal requirements to the project platform. And so let's see if I can go on Google Sheets right now. And then so this project platform rests in Google Sheets. And the reason I created it is so that there's a way to organize your project directly on a spreadsheet. So yes, platforms are nice to have in some circumstances, and in some ways they can help with accessibility through organization. The problem with platforms as they exist, actually there are multiple. One of the problems with platforms as they exist from digital accessibility companies is they provide low value. The digital accessibility companies charge an annual subscription in the thousands of dollars to have access to their platform, when that's not really, organizing a project shouldn't take thousands of dollars, especially when most of the organization can take place in an Excel spreadsheet or simply another way. So looking at this project platform, we just have the inventory of the different digital assets. So I've tabbed to a different worksheet. You have websites, the pages that might be involved. So you might have independent pages outside of your websites. You might have PDFs, and you might have you're going to have documents. So for example, Word documents, etc., PowerPoints, and the list goes on. And so this worksheet's an inventory. This worksheet helps you detail progress. So if you are working on progress in-house, let's say you have your own developer who's contracting with you, they can work off of this spreadsheet, which includes all of the different success criteria involved, their WCAG numbering, a link to the WCAG course, which is my course. So if someone needs to have the success criteria explained beyond the quick summary of the success criteria, they can go access the course, find out exactly what is required. And then there's also the roles, because there are different roles involved in accessibility. So there might be a content editor, there might be a developer, there might be a designer, and this helps you designate those different roles. And then you have the status. So maybe you want to mark it as 50% complete, etc. But this also is here to help you organize. They're staying for a mobile app, and obviously these can be copied and pasted copied and pasted on. And then continuing on, we have a timeline. So the project timeline, and then another worksheet for project budget. So I created this just because people need a way to organize all of these different details that are involved in the project. And this way they have a platform to get started. And then this last worksheet is also resources. And yes, hopefully some clarity. And let's see. Yeah, so this is here, and it's for anybody. I created it for Title II public entities, but it's for anybody. And one of the other reasons I created is because a lot of platforms are centered and based around a scan, and scans mislead, I would say, 98% of people. So many people are under a false impression of scans, and you can get almost all of the value from a scan for free, but there are these platforms, and they're bundled with a scan and possibly other services. And what you need to do as someone who has a project is really remove, like extract all of the unnecessary products. And I don't even say services, because typically services aren't involved. It's products they're trying to sell you. If you see the word solutions, you know there's a problem. And that's not because solutions has to have a negative association, but in this case it does. And so thank you. By the way, thanks for adding comments in the chat, because this can help guide me. But loving the stream, thanks so much. Yes, definitely. And if you want to reach out to me after the live stream, you can email me, and I will put my email in the description. It's chris@accessible.org. And by the way, so with these comments, I want to add one reason I'm creating this live stream is so that there's real talk around compliance and accessibility, because this industry is a fake industry. There is so much deception, and there are so many digital accessibility companies that are lying, and they're outright deceiving people. And that's that really spurs me to create real alignment with what people really need. And so that's one of the reasons why I created the live stream, and I want to do more live streams, is because we need to have actual discussion about accessibility. And it doesn't need to be, one other thing is I don't want it to make it seem like, okay, there's this idea that we have to be perfect about accessibility, which is not at all the case. And so when we have these laws and we're talking about WCAG conformance, people get so strict on this, and what we really need to do is just focus in on the essentials and the basics, and not trying to get this exactly right. Like, I don't understand when people are criticizing people for very understandable mistakes, especially minor mistakes, when you have overlays sitting right there. And yes, looking at overlay companies, looking at them and more. I'm not just talking about overlay companies. We have some companies that are regarded as genuine accessibility companies, and yet they're out there providing solutions that aren't solving anything in terms of what these different public entities and these different private entities as well that are working to prevent lawsuits, and then under this Title III umbrella, all of these. There's I'm not saying all. I'm definitely not saying all, but many digital accessibility companies are misleading people, and they're selling things that are a complete waste of time. And a complete waste of money. And so that's part of what I'm anticipating with Title II compliance, is people are going to go and they're going to waste their money. Like, literally, someone told me the other day that someone paid $50,000 for what was basically a scan platform. And again, no manual services involved. So just think about their reaction when they find out, okay, well, this scan, what did we actually pay for? Because we can go scan a web page for free. There's there's very nominal value with scans, but they're packaged together, and people are continually deceived. And I'm going to do my best to undo some of that's happening, because we're still at the beginning when it comes to digital accessibility and compliance. This is going to continue on, and I want to do as much as I can to make sure that the buyers aren't misled, because ultimately this affects people with disabilities, because people are buying to make their digital experiences accessible, and what happens is the buyers get rerouted. They get sold on quote unquote solutions that don't provide accessibility anyway, and then who ends up losing is people with disabilities. So I want to make sure that I put out information, and part of this is in a live stream, because when I record videos, I just get into this habit where I have like this certain way of saying things, and with the live stream, I'm just going to talk, and it's going to be, more, less technical. And yes, thank you for commenting on that. I will raise awareness continually, and I'm glad you found out about it too. I'm glad Community Engine. I'm glad you're on the stream as well. We're going to keep doing this because I want to add to this chat. And by the way, thank you both for joining this chat. But I'm going to keep having live streams, because the more people that are on these live streams, the more we can turn people away from these fake solutions and the really disingenuous selling that goes on. I see it over and over again. And what's happened is sellers want to sell people on what works for the sellers, but not what works for the buyers. The buyers need services. Sellers don't want to sell services. Why? Services are now unsexy. It's unsexy to make money. You can't just make money through providing what the customer needs. You have to have software as a service. And the reason you have to have software as a service is because it gets you higher margins. You can charge subscriptions. You might have heard of accessibility as a journey. Hold on, I got something in my throat. Yes, Sarah, thank you for commenting. Yeah, share the stream. I will be streaming. I plan to stream on Mondays. So if anybody wants to join in, it's going to be real information, and I'm going to be talking about what these different companies are doing. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, like this has to be known, because otherwise I will tell you guys that like billions of dollars will be wasted. So many times accessibility is overlooked, and because it's overlooked, people aren't paying attention. Because people aren't paying attention, they end up buying into solutions. And again, it's not just overlays. Overlays, yes, they are directly a part of the problem, and they have been a problem for a long time, but it is also the digital accessibility companies that hold themselves out as truly helping. And what they do is they disguise it, because they will acknowledge the need for manual services, but they will try to package things into what makes them more profitable. And that's what I was talking about, is they were, you have higher margins, subscriptions. So then they start talking about accessibility as accessibility as a journey. That's a common phrase. Well, in a way, in a sense, okay, yes, like you want to continue on with accessibility, but accessibility doesn't have to be a journey in the sense that we're continually paying you for a subscription on an annual basis. No, that's this idea that digital companies want to propel and continue forward, because it's the way that they continue to get revenue, and that's absolutely what's not necessary. What actually should happen, if they're being genuine, is we talk about starting with accessibility. You might need to outsource originally, but we need to train our team and the people in our organization, everybody, really everybody, but especially those that are creating digital content, that are editing the code. We need to make sure that they become proficient in accessibility, and then we need to, hopefully as they gain experience, then they become mini experts in and of themselves, and we can just take out accessibility services altogether. So yes, starting with the service makes sense, because you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skill set, But then you progress on to where you're doing it all of yourself, and you don't need to rely on a digital accessibility company. A lot of them, they want this to seem more confusing than it is. There are layers to it, there are details to it, but this is stuff that anybody can learn. It can just take some time. It takes some training, but this is something that anybody can learn. And then ideally, we just push accessibility companies out. So that's what's happening. But digital accessibility companies want you to think that everything needs to be routed through them. So if you'll notice too, some of their talking points, they get really sticky for them because they can't really talk around them, because if they offer training, they also don't want to offer you a plan around where they're sunsetted, right? And they want, if so, they want that to be years in the future, because they want to have that recurring revenue. So it continues on and on. That is great to hear, Community Engine. And let's see, seems like a lot of companies are riding the wave of fear as to itself. Yeah, widgets, definitely. Widgets, right? Like, the one funny thing, the video that I meant to create that I never did was this new update to regulation. It really effectively kills the idea of a widget. Why would they give you 2 or 3 years to install a widget, right? And I know that's just for websites, but nowhere in this regulation does it say widgets are an acceptable means. And of course it wouldn't. These things have been preposterous from the beginning, but it just goes to show you that many people weren't paying attention. But also, we had a lot of fraud that was going on, like a lot of people, like a lot of claims that were never true. But this is a unique industry. It's one where people have the ability to take advantage of the details or lack thereof. And so part of that is, like, you come out with a widget and you say that it can do everything, even though it can't. That's great that you have a community engine, that you have an open source and inclusive platform, community platform. That's actually something I was thinking about. So if you can also include a link in the chat, because it would be great to have. But so that's a lot of what the live streams are, is real talk on doing a lot of the bad education that has taken place from accessibility companies, and we see a lot of it. And the problem is that people are learning as they are being sold on accessibility. And if you're learning about accessibility from sellers, they can't help themselves. They tell you what they want you to buy rather than what you need. And so it's actually very, very simple. Is you need the manual services to start off with, and you need training. And then as you continue on, you continue on with training, it makes it very simple to the point where you understand what is needed and what's not. Thank you, Nyan. So you understand what's needed, and you realize that, okay, now I can see clearly that this is a scam and that I don't need it. So the focus is on manual services, and whenever you see solutions and anything else packaged together with it, then you know that something has gone awry. And if you think about it logically, like let's just say we're a Title II entity and we are working towards compliance. If we're buying a scan, right? If we're purchasing into the scan, but we're also purchasing services, how exactly do you reconcile the scan with the services? Because if the scan's going on, right? Like if I've purchased a scan and I have these results, these automated results that I have to review anyway, how do I work through them while the services are ongoing? So that's part of the pitch that digital accessibility sellers have had a tough time with. Of course, we know there's benefit in scans, but the reason I go so counter with them is because the benefit has been oversold to the point where people think they are ADA compliance checkers, which is obviously not even close to accurate. So that is part of why we have this stream. And by the way, you will see a stream posted for this coming Monday, because I want this to be a regular part of discussion, and hopefully as we continue on with this stream, we get more and more people, and to the point where I want to turn this the other way, where we've taken accessibility and compliance mainstream, people are aware of it, and then ultimately these companies that are lying and they're being deceitful, they end up dying. So that's really the idea here, is let's continue on with genuine accessibility. Let's continue on with real value. There's nothing wrong with making money from accessibility. What's wrong is when you lie to people about what they need and you reroute them into what makes you money rather than what gets them their end objective. Thank you, Community Engine. Yeah, I would love to see you. I'd love to see you in here. All of you, everybody, thank you for chatting with me. All right, so I wanted to add in this that I had a press release come out today, and by the way, this is coincidental. I didn't even realize that my press release was coming out today until I thought about it before the live stream was going. And I was, because last night, the reason why this live stream happened just all of a sudden is because last night I was like, I don't want to put off this live stream anymore. And by the way, I plan on bringing in other people to the live stream. It won't be just me. But I didn't want to put it off anymore. And live streaming takes some doing. Like, it's not overly complicated, but if you haven't started a live stream before, then you realize that you have to spend probably a few hours to learn what it takes to set it up. But I was thinking about that last night, and then this morning, a few hours before the stream started, I realized, I was like, oh yeah, I have a press release coming out today. So I'm tabbed over to the press release now, and I will link to this in the description. This is on Yahoo Finance. And so the title here is ADA Title II Web Accessibility Rule makes WCAG 2.1 AA training necessary for compliance and digital growth. And part of this is to get people, I want people to not only be aware of accessibility, of what they need, but to be excited about this. It's good for people to be excited about accessibility and what the possibilities are, right? Because one thing I tell people is like, look, like, if you're a first mover on accessibility, this is coming. We've already seen an increase in demand for accessibility and VPATs, etc. But if you're on top of accessibility, you stand to gain business-wise too. So in this press release, I mentioned that there wasn't a lot of media coverage about the new Title II update, and I think part of the reason is because Title II applies to state and local governments, so people are like, that's not the Title III update that would potentially create bigger waves. But I talk about how this is going to impact the private and the public sectors. And so I say this is a quote from mine from the article that I'm on now. I say this starts with state and local governments, but the cumulative effect is massive. Our vendor clients are already seeing a significant increase in demand for accessibility and ADA compliance. And by 2025, you can expect WCAG 2.1 AA conformance to become a standard contract requirement in both public and private sectors. This is already happening right now, right? But it is quickly taking over the private landscape. And part of this is because of the effect of public entities have to be compliant. And so what do they in turn do? Well, they require their vendors, their contractors to be WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. And so what ends up happening is this has already been taking into effect, but now it's going to take over the marketplace. And so potentially even people that aren't aware, like the consumers that aren't aware of the importance of accessibility, they will be reminded, because now some of these different digital providers, so like a digital product provider, for example, they will bring it up because they will start to feature it. They will feature WCAG 2.1 AA conformance. So this is going to happen. Like if you are aware of this now and you start to focus in on WCAG 2.1 AA conformance, and even if it's a simple digital product, you stand to gain from it because you are ahead of the game. And it's really easy to get ahead in accessibility because so many people disregard it, ignore it. They think it's too boring. They don't want to pay attention to it. But I'm telling you, this has happened. We've already seen the Department of Justice, they came down. The edict is in. And so if you are ahead of this, then you stand to gain. So yes, there's a lot to be excited about here. It's not all just like, what do we have to do? This is going to be more work. Yes, it is more work, but it's important work, and it is work that will definitely pay off. So just continuing down with the press release, and it's really quick. One effect is that the Department of Health and Human Services, they just went ahead and copied the ADA Title II rule. So now you have all of the different health entities that are receiving federal funds under Section 504. They all have to be WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. So, I mean, just think about it. Now we have this whole sector has to be accessible. And it's not just the websites, right? The ADA Title II is going to apply to content. So social media content is going to be affected. Documents are going to be affected. And then when we look at HB 21-1110, this is Colorado. This is the Colorado state law. And all of these different public entities in Colorado, and I talked about this at the beginning of the stream, they all have to be compliant now. And guess what the standard is? The technical standard is WCAG 2.1 AA. So there is so much opportunity in accessibility, and it's actually surprising to me that more people aren't in on this. But again, for some reason, people just cannot be bothered with accessibility. And then so the article ends up with me talking about the importance of training, as the DOJ already said, and then I talk about the WCAG course, and that's really it. But knowing the web content accessibility guidelines, even if you're just someone like, hey, I'm looking for a career opportunity, what a way to set yourself apart. And I've already seen, by the way, there are so many jobs that are coming up, and I'm talking about like a legitimate, you can have a job that pays like a medium, what's it called, like a middle income salary, just off of accessibility. And another reason for the opportunity is there is a shortage. So few people are aware of the web content accessibility guidelines. So few people even have proficiency in these guidelines, and it doesn't take you that long to really pick up accessibility and then learn it, and then you just need some more experience after that. But again, it's not like it's not like perfection is necessary. It's not like you have to know everything. And when it comes to the web content accessibility guidelines, yes, there are more technically advanced success criteria, but it's not as if you need to know how to apply those. Depending on the role you're in, you just need to know what is required. So just knowing what is required puts you ahead. So even if you have a non-technical background, you can still really stand to gain just by learning the web content accessibility guidelines. WCAG 2.1 AA is where the universe is it's centered to, and everything is headed towards. So if you pay attention to WCAG 2.1 AA, that is really going to help you. Thank you, Amy. I try to, one of the things one of the reasons I got into accessibility so far, I didn't intend to go this far. What I noticed was that a lot of the information was misaligned. And when I was learning accessibility myself, and this started like in 2017, I was just reading articles, and I didn't know exactly what was the right, let's say, answer, but I knew the information that was being provided was wrong. And so because I knew it was wrong, I was like, I can write whatever the answer is. I already know that my information is going to be better than the information that is being put out by these different digital accessibility companies. And by the way, a lot of the digital accessibility companies, the people within the company don't even understand what they're talking about a lot of the time. Now, I'm not saying most of the time, because there are some really people that are just like lights out with accessibility. But what you'll find is as you go through accessibility, if you talk to some of these different salespeople, or if you learn more about the people within the company, especially some people in the C-suites, you will find out that they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't even know the product that they're selling. They're involved in the business of it, but because they don't understand accessibility themselves, it really makes for a poor business model that I think, as Lauren, you said, time will always reveal the truth. Yeah, these people are going to get exposed, and a lot of them have already. But there are a lot of frauds in this industry who, by the way, it's not, again, if somebody makes a mistake with accessibility, I've made mistakes with accessibility. That's not it. It's about effort, and if you are wrong, correct where you're wrong. And so sometimes accessibility gets misconstrued, and people can be really, they can jump on someone for getting something wrong about accessibility. But that's not what this is about. It's about effort, right? Because we have to progress, and then ideally we want everybody. If you want to share a link, absolutely share a link. But if it's not about being perfect, it's just about effort and moving towards the right direction. And especially when you consider the fact that we've had overlays exist in this industry for almost a decade now, and I mean that alone tells you that making a mistake is not they might have been. I didn't. Community Engine, some sense of clarity. They might have been removed by the YouTube chat. I did not set that. But if you email me, I will put those links in the description. So if you guys want to share resources, if you email me, I will put them in the description so that more people can see them. But I don't know. This is my first stream. I was just trying out. I was beta testing a stream last night at like midnight, and I was like, I just wanted to do it. I wanted to try it and see how it goes, because this information needs to be known. And yeah, absolutely, Amy. This information needs to be known, and we need to have less people that are being deceived and wasting money, because I can already tell you that hundreds of millions of dollars have been wasted on accessibility products that are they're just gone. Like, the money's gone, the products are gone, they're in the background, and nothing ever came of them, right? There are so many companies that, they'll go to a digital accessibility company, and they are looking for the final answer, right? Like, it's like, I need to accomplish this. How can I do this? And they will be told a wonderful tale on all of these amazing things that all of these quote unquote solutions are going to do. And then what ends up happening? 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, they realized, hey, nothing, we never finished this project, or our website still has accessibility issues. And that's what's funny is sometimes you go to a company page and they've worked with an accessibility company for years, and then you can just go, all you have to do is use Wave. I use the Wave browser extension, and you just use the Wave browser extension, and they've got the simplest of accessibility issues right there on their homepage. And it's like, what have you guys been doing this whole time? And it's because they got rerouted by a seller, and then ultimately nothing ever came of this. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes, and many times, some companies just aren't proactive. They don't prioritize this. Their developers don't really work on this. So there is, it's not to say that it's all, a digital accessibility company's fault. But when you see the same results over and over again, at some point the accessibility company is to blame. And by the way, something that many people don't know is that a lot of accessibility companies, they won't work on remediation. So that right there creates a disjointed process, which makes it more difficult to end up becoming conformant. Yes, I mean, and overlays too. Overlays are known to be targeted by plaintiffs' lawyers now. This has been happening for some time. So it's not only that they don't do anything, and it's not only all of the other problems. Which one problem I have that I don't think anybody really talks about is the separate but equal problem. Why, if I have a disability, do I have to use and learn some widget? Why would I have to do that? Why can't I just use the website? And that's what, getting back to the whole point of this is so that we have equal access. And then yet we have overlay widgets that come in and they inject themselves into the conversation. And it's like, nobody ever asked for you. You don't solve any problems. You don't make my website ADA compliant. You've been proven. It's been proven. We have demonstrable evidence that overlay widgets don't stop lawsuits. So it's like, at what point do we ask, like, well, what exactly is it that you do? And what they do is they increase the profit margins of the companies that sell them, but they don't provide the practical value, and they've just been problematic for years. And the worst thing about them isn't that they rip off people; it's that they've diverted a movement that was designed around ensuring access to people with disabilities, and they've diverted this movement and this momentum into, hey, look at our widget, look at all of these, zoom and color contrast things that our widget does. So I mean, there's certain things are bad just because they're a ripoff, but other things are bad because they're actually bad beyond the ripoff, and that's been the case with overlay widgets. I have to drink one last drink of water. After a while, your mouth just gets dry. I never talked. I don't think I ever talked this long continuously on a recorded video. If there are any other questions you guys have, let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue on. And by the way, we're close to the end here. I'm only going to go a few more minutes. But here, getting back to the resources. I have the videos, getting started guides, the practical guides. There are templates. Oh, if you need an accessibility statement template, if you've seen an accessibility policy template, those are both available on accessible.org. The statement is completely free. The policy is free. You just have to subscribe to Accessible to get it. And then there are, of course, my WCAG guides and checklists, which are also completely free. Let's see. I've seen companies claim they specialize in accessibility, and then I do a tab test and it fails the first thing. Yeah, so often the case, right? I mean, especially the different digital accessibility sellers, and some of them sell more than just accessibility, but most of them have improved their game where it's like, okay, they know we can't have any glaring accessibility issues now, but a lot of them just don't even, they're trying to sell accessibility. I'll tell you, one of the worst instances of this is with the marketers that get into accessibility. And I can certainly understand the lure, because accessibility is a gateway to potentially SEO and other things. But you have so many people that are joining in on this, and they are telling people the exact wrong thing. They tell people, use my affiliate link to buy this overlay. And I won't go to the website now, but there is an SEO person or personality who has this page, and she says that she provides ADA compliance. And what she does, and she has all of these different options for, let's say, 1 to 100 pages or 100 to 1,000 pages. And she is literally charging 5 figures on these packages. I hope she hasn't sold one, but she's charging 5 figures, and all she's doing is she's turning around. She's probably she might not be taking an affiliate commission from the overlays, but she's probably getting a discount of some kind. And then her idea is to resell those widgets for, I don't know what kind of a percentage markup that is. But that is also hurting the problem. And these marketers, they don't care either. They're out there, whatever they can sell, they're selling it. And it's not, I understand if somebody gets confused on overlays, if somebody buys an overlay, it happens, right? Sometimes you're just not paying attention. You want to be involved in something, you read it. These sales pitches are really, really good. They've sold a lot for a reason. They make it sound so easy. But my problem with anybody is, once you find out that you're wrong, and overlayfactsheet.com, if you don't know you're wrong, then that will tell you you're wrong if you're on the overlay widget side. So all you have to do, to me, is if you find out that you've taken the wrong step, just go ahead and undo that, work against it, right? Like, hey, I put out this information. I've researched further. I found out it was wrong. I no longer recommend overlay widgets, etc. many of my peers are getting contacted by these companies and they're being offered money to say how great they are. Yes, yeah, the social proof. That's part of the reason why they're compelling to so many people is they put out as much social proof as they have. It's disheartening because they don't realize that it's pretty much a scam. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not. If somebody is tricked into an overlay widget, I get it. Like it happens. There are good sales pitches. They have a good story. They've created crafted a very nice narrative around what they sell. But you just have to, when you do find out that this is not genuine accessibility, then you just have to go the opposite direction. But yeah, I mean, too many people have bought these overlay widgets, and it's just like people think they do something. It's like people will say, "Well, I haven't been sued." Well, it's like, yeah, well, you probably wouldn't have been anyway, just for the sheer numbers of this, right? The math doesn't work out. So some people, I've been told, I've consulted with a client directly. I've told them outright everything that I've told you in this stream. And the people will come back to me and they will say, I don't care. It's a stopgap. The lure of these widgets is strong, and they have definitely use some psychological tactics in their marketing. But one thing that I think people want to buy into is they want to believe that this is easy, that this can be done through software. And of course, we all know that that's not the case, but that is part of the reason why people buy into them. So, but again, back to the stream, and this is a good way to close it, is just that the more information that gets out, and this is already happening, by the way, I see it on Reddit, more and more people know that overlay widgets don't work. More and more people are becoming aware that scans are very limited. They're helpful, but they're limited. So the information is getting out there. It just can't get out there fast enough. So the more that we tell people, the more it's going to help. It's not, and by the way, the DOJ is another turning point. They came out with this update to regulation. The update to regulation, even though it didn't say anything. I didn't read any language against overlay widgets. Implicitly, if you read through the language, it's like, where would an overlay widget fit in on this? And so it wouldn't. So I'm going to wrap up the stream right here. Thank you all for joining and participating. So this helps, and we're going to continue on with this on next Monday. So on next Monday, it is my plan to have another stream, possibly at the same time. It may be like an hour different, but I would love to see you all back. Thank you for joining. Yes, Sarah, thank you so much, and it will be great to see you on Monday, and we will continue on with this. So thank you, everybody, for joining.